Hey there, this is a review for Castles and Crusades campaign, session 47. This was a big game in the fact that I had 7 players at the table. So we had Lork, we had Artemis, we had Spraull, we had Barry, Cosmo, Rhonin, and Unaxx. Really good. Doesn't happen very often, but it was really good to have all those folks at the table at once. That was great. So we started off in the city of Dornval. Party, for the most part, with the exception of Unaxx, are at the Temple of the Golden Spear, awaiting to. They've been summoned there by Priest Brigsby, and for Lork's resurrection. So we started off the session with that, and that was more than just it happening. So what I did was, I had a little cutscene, and the last thing that it started with Lork, and the last thing he remembers is he got hit with that spell, and it was a phantasmal killer, which brings your worst fear to life, and it killed him. So his worst fear at that time was he remembered that the demon, the butcher, that he had beaten in that fight just before Tristana, he had got the killing blow on. It had vowed to come and have his vengeance on him. So that's what he saw. And then his world went black because the spell killed him. And he awakes in this field, this clearing in the forest, in this pine forest, and he can hear birds chirping and feel the sunlight on him. And he's laying there, and he hears this crow or raven cawing at him, but it's calling his name and telling him to get up. So he sits up, and another crow comes in, or another raven comes in, and starts cawing at him to get up, and he gets up, and then as he gets up, the crows start to change, and they change into 2 forms that he's familiar with. One was Morgana, the witch of the Homewood, and the other one was Ravlunda, this mysterious woman that he and some of the other party members have met on several occasions. And they basically are asking him, they're talking about him, and ask him if he's, despite everything that he's been through, is he willing to go on? Does he want to go on? And ultimately, and they're evaluating him, like just walking a circle around him, and talking to him, and talking about him, and how he was basically a child of hate and violence because he's a half-orc. And but despite that, he's risen above his station, and he's accepted by people, meaning the people of Arden and his friends, which that list of friends is expanding. So ultimately, they're like, "Do you want to still go on?" And he says, he answers yes, and they beckon him to stand between them, and when they do, they're on each side of him, and they reach down, they grasp him by the forearm, and then he's just engulfed in this golden divine light, and he's brought back. And the last he hears their voices as he's fading out of this scene. Go back, go back, go back, Raven's son, they call him. And then he wakes in this temple, the Temple of the Golden Spear. He's got burning sensations in his forearms, and when he looks at his forearms, there's 2 different raven tattoos now on his forearms. No idea what any of that means, but he looks around and he realizes he's surrounded by his friends in a temple he's not familiar with, and they explain to him what happened. He collects himself a little bit, and ultimately gathers his gear, which the temple took care of while he was there, and they head back to the Hammered Gauntlet. It's early in the day. It's before lunchtime. And as they're traveling through the city of Dornval, they see up ahead, they're still like in the temple district, they see a verbal altercation going on between 2 factions, 2 small factions. One is one they recognize, Matrona, and the other one is not one they recognize. And they're kind of going back and forth, just verbally. And the one that they don't recognize is talking about their god not being the true, the Matrona god not being the true power, and their god's the true power, and rah rah rah. The party doesn't get involved really too much, with the exception of Rhonin. Rhonin, who's very, at this point, I think anti-religion is an accurate way to describe him. He picks up a loose cobblestone and he hands it to one of the a member of the religious group that they don't recognize, and then they kind of just keep walking. They don't stick around, and they don't get too far when they hear the cry of pain, and they look back, and that guy had used that cobblestone to crack one of the other people from the Temple of Matrona with it. So there's like a little scuffle ensues, but they just keep on going in their direction and don't get involved. They return to the Hammered Gauntlet, which is it's been in previous sessions. It's a big inn in the docks district that caters to adventurers. And they're reunited with Unaxx, who's come south, maybe looking for Barry. And it's time for them to celebrate. Lork is back, and so that's what they do. And so we did this a little bit of a bar scene. It actually lasted for a little bit because everybody kind of got into it, and some good role playing. Barry, expertly played by my buddy Dave, got slobbering drunk and ended up passing face down in his food. He gets taken up to his room for a bit by Lork. It did note, though, at that time, there were a couple members of the City Watch had come in off their shift and were paying attention to the party, because they're telling stories and stuff, so they're drawing quite a bit of attention to themselves. They're reunited with Cosmo's Uncle Slim, and he's hanging out with them. Barry eventually recovers. I think we had, I think he made a constitution roll, and he rolled really well. He might have even been a natural 20. So he recovers in a couple hours. The party's still down there, celebrating. Uncle Slim's there. He ends up engaging in a card game with Barry. And unlike the last time they played cards, Barry actually won. So they played a couple different sets. We usually do like 3 rounds, and Barry ultimately won the whole thing. And it was fun, just role play, because none of it was scripted, none of it was planned. I didn't have anything written out. It was just Uncle Slim was there, and a lot of it's just feeding off what the players are saying and doing. And so he's borrowing money off his nephew Cosmo, and then he loses it all, and he's like, "Don't worry, lad, I'll get that back." And he goes, "I'll be right back." And he gets up and he starts, working the crowd for pickpocketing, because Uncle Slim is a thief. So it was a lot of fun. One of the things they ultimately noticed eventually was that the City Watch, the members that were in the common room, they recognize Barry, and Barry is a wanted man in this city. Like his backstory involves him being wanted in this particular city. So before that happened, though, there was more like role play stuff going on, which was really great. Rhonin leaves the inn, and he wants to find a music shop, and he ends up finding one and buys a drum. And the whole purpose is going to be to torment Barry in his extreme hangover he's going to have for a while. So he does that. But back to the City Watch, they recognize Barry, and it's obvious to a few of the members in the party. But not all the members of the party know Barry's a wanted man here. Like they know the city isn't friendly to wizards. Like, you can be a wizard, but you can't cast arcane spells in the city. It's illegal. But they don't know, with the exception of Lork, they don't know that he's actually wanted in this city. And Lork doesn't give up that information other than the details of it. He just does tell the party, like, hey, Barry's a wanted dude in this city, so we gotta get him out of here. So Lork actually escorts Barry out of the common room, and he gets him in an alley, tells him what's going on, because Barry didn't notice that he was being observed. And he decides Barry turns invisible, and kind of the party's not sure what to do, so they're trying to figure that out because they still plan to hit the slaver stronghold that they learned about that evening after they're done partying it up like true adventurers. And so they kind of mill around a little bit, but ultimately Barry ends up sneaking back into the inn and waiting in Lork's room. So when they decide to head out, he's there waiting for Lork, which scares the hell out of him when he talks to him because he's still invisible. And they make a plan. So they late that night they leave. And when they did leave, with when Lork and Barry had left the inn, the watchmen followed them, but they didn't see where they went. They had specifically ducked into an alley, and the watchmen lost them. So they end up deciding, yep, we're still going to hit the slavers, and we're going to get out of this city. So they get their gear together. It's late now, and they head over across the river to where the hideout is. Barry's still invisible. Invisibility in Castle Crusades lasts until you attack something. You cause damage. I don't know if it's specifically... If you attack something, you're going to lose it. Other than that, it lasts forever. So he hasn't attacked anybody. He just stays invisible, which was played out really smart. Because when they get to the stronghold, the hideout for the slavers, some of the party can sneak around. Like Cosmo, Lork can sneak around because of his boots. Artemis, not so much, only because he's a ranger and not in a wilderness setting, so his sneak isn't what it would be if they were outside the city walls. But Barry smartly decides he walks up to the door and then turns into gaseous form, which doesn't disrupt his invisibility because he didn't attack anybody. And he slips through the cracks under the door and gets into the stronghold to scout it out. So when they come in here, the first room they hit is this one here, this room here, and it's got about 10 guys in it. It's got 2 guys at the door guarding it, and then the rest are just sitting around drinking, playing cards and stuff. And then he goes up to the second floor, which is this one, and this is a barracks, and this had like 3 guys at the table playing cards and 4 guys sleeping. This room here, they don't get to. There's a trap door in the ceiling, and it's closed and locked, and Barry didn't go up there. So instead, he goes down to the basement. In the basement, he can see that there's a section here that is holding prisoners. There's several guards down here, and one of the prisoners he recognizes as Eudora, the woman that gave Spraull the one piece of the rod of 7 parts. She's held prisoner there, which kind of changes, I think, to me it appeared like it kind of changed their channels a little bit. It caught them by surprise that she was actually there. So at this time, that gaseous form only lasts like 6 minutes, so it had run out by the time Barry returned to the first floor. And he decides to cause a diversion. The rest of the party had kind of got into position. Lork was moved up silently, was right next to the door. Unaxx was kind of hanging back a little bit, wisely. He's probably the most fragile member of the party, next to Barry. Barry causes a diversion. He picks up a bottle, and once he takes possession of it, it turns invisible, but then he throws it against a far wall. This does get the attention of the people playing cards. But the 2 door guards are kind of surprised because all of a sudden they see this bottle appear out of nowhere and smashed. They don't attack, but they're alerted, and Barry opens the door, and that's the cue for the party to come in. And Lork comes in, and a big battle ensues in here. So if you listen to my last recap, I mentioned how crappy my dice rolls were that night. Not as bad in this session, but still not great. I had 10 adversaries in here to start with, and I barely did. I did some damage. Like Rhonin took a lot of damage, but he actually switched to his sword because he knew using a bow in here would be not very easy. So he ended up getting surrounded. So I was rolling a lot of attacks on him and just kind of whittling him down. Some other attacks. Lork came in, and I mean, between being a ranger, fighting humanoids, and having a human bane battle axe, he was just a wrecking crew. He came in and just decimated things. So, but it was a long fight in here. It did last a long time. There were so many adversaries. They had a couple come down from upstairs and join them. There was 2 dwarves, and they were a little bit tougher. They had a couple attacks each, and a little bit tougher opponents. Ultimately, though, they do defeat these guys here. This is where they decide to split the party, and you had Lork, Artemis, Cosmo, and Rhonin go to the basement, and everybody else goes to this floor. And this is the second floor. This is like a barracks area for the slavers. They get here. There's nobody here, which kind of surprised them. And then they're, oh, trapdoor. The trapdoor is locked, so they have to negotiate that. We kind of set that aside for a minute, and then we went to this here. So this is the basement. They come in, and one of the people they see is, they see this guy, and this is a guy named Maven Muldoon, and he is Aaron Cray, who's the leader of the slaver band's right-hand man, like her second in charge. Lork and Rhonin are familiar with him from their time way back when they were captured by the slavers. There's this dude here. He didn't really have a name that they learned, but he's a big half-ogre. And they asked if this was representative of the actual figure. I said yes. He actually reminds you of Pounder, who is also a half-ogre and a friend of theirs. And then there was 2 other guards there. So they get into a fight down here with them. This fight didn't last super long either. Maven was pretty tough, but again, Lork, being a ranger and having that human bane battle axe, made pretty short work. Like I think he got dropped in like 2 rounds, and he did some damage in the beginning, and it was somewhat gratifying. My son, who plays Lork, said that he was nervous when Maven started making multiple attacks, because he did have a good to hit bonus and stuff. So he did get a couple hits in, but ultimately the party, these guys wiped these guys out. They dropped. I think Lork got the killing blow on both Maven and the half-ogre. It was a team effort, and these poor schmucks back here were just shooting crossbow bolts. And Cosmo was funny in all these fights because he got boots of striding and springing, so his new tactic is to jump around like a friggin' bunny, and he's like hopping all over the place. And he did that up here in the main room too, to get into position to get behind somebody. So it was really fun. It was nice to see, making good use of that magic item. So they ultimately defeat the bad guys down here, free the prisoners, which are super grateful to be freed. They take possession basically of Eudora because her mind isn't quite right, and they're familiar with her. They check out this area out here. This leads out to the sewers, and there's some boats out there. They ultimately use those boats to get out of the city, because they want to get out of there. They'd already sent Barry's wagon with its 2 crew members out of the city and told them to go north like an hour or so, and then just wait for them, and they'll catch up. Back up here, Spraull and Barry actually get through the trapdoor, and they find this room up here, and this is just a small, like an apartment. The dressing and stuff is much finer than what was in like down here and down the basement on the first floor. There's a cask of very fine wine, a bed, but no like treasure chest or anything like that. There is a door, which they go out and they find a balcony, and they hadn't seen this part because this balcony was on the riverside of the house. The balcony runs the length of the building, and on one side they can see where boards have been laid across to the next house, and they rightly assume at this point that Aaron Cray, who's the leader of this slaver band, got away. So she escaped. Party, like I said, they come down here. They rejoin, come down here, and they decide to use the sewers to get out of the city. They have all their stuff, so they're ready to go. They take Eudora with them. And one of the other things they noted, and I actually had to tell the party this later because I forgot to tell them to them, is in this room, there's like these big blackboards, and they had lists of like base prices for slaves, and based on age and race and gender and all that stuff, and like the ages went all the way down to children. So these are not good people, and they do determine that, like, this basically was also a room because there was some big huge wash tubs here, and they figure that they would auction off or sell slaves here, and then probably get them out of the city through the sewers. So yeah, so they we're getting close to our end time for our session. But one of the things, like talking to Iridora, she starts talking to them, and she's clearly a little bit confused because her mind is not right, and she asked them if they're going to take her to Dustthorn, and they're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, she's like, well, I hired you to escort me to Dustthorn. And they're like, oh, that's where she was going when they first found her, and they found all her dead mercenaries that were on the road, and she had fled into a nearby patch of woods where they had found her. So that was where she was going. And now I think, and the guys can jump in the comments, I hope they do, they assume there's some clue there or something about the Rod of Seven Parts. There's a reason she's going there, because her life's goal was to collect all the pieces of the Rod of Seven Parts. So Dustthorn is a city north of them. It's on the same lake, the old Morwell that Arden's on, but it's kind of on the opposite side. But it's a city of mystery, or town of mystery, because like over 150 plus years, 175 years ago, this gray mist enveloped the city, and people that lived there weren't seen again, and the few people that have gone there to investigate it have never come back. So, and the party's never been there. They've been close to it because the Tower of Isran Muse, which they've been to a few times, is not far from there. It's like probably right on the border of that gray mist. It's pretty close, and it's not far from Dustthorn. So their plan is to head there next. They know they got some travel ahead of them. So I think the way we ended it is they plan on traveling north, probably to Moss Haven, which is the next town up. Yeah, and that's where we ended the session. It was a real good session. Again, my dice rolls were not not what I wanted them to be, but it was still good. And I had fun. They had fun. Like I said, it was really cool to have 7 players at the table. That hasn't happened a lot in this campaign because we don't. The way I run it, West Marsh's style, we don't hold it up for people because it just becomes a scheduling nightmare, especially with that many players. So if I get a couple people, we'll play a game. So that style of play has been really good for our group because our consistency is great. We're over 2 years into this campaign, and there's only been 1 month where we didn't play, and that was because we were doing our gaming weekend that month. So we didn't play that. We didn't have a session that month. But other than that, we've had a session every month, sometimes more than one. And now with the B team going, we're definitely having more than one session a month. So it's been really good, and it was really fun to have everybody here. It was a good night of gaming. So I appreciate everybody watching. And if, like I always say, if you got questions or comments or any questions about like the train I use, I might do another video because this was a little bit bigger build. I might do just a video on this to talk about it. But any of that stuff, or how I set up games, or my thoughts on designing game sessions and campaigns, fire them away. But I appreciate you all watching. Catch you at the next one.